Hey everybody, it's your pal Choppadong, and we are coming at you with a Monday, July 26th version of MLB Made Easy, brought to you by one and only DFSArmy.com, one-stop shopping all things daily fantasy sports. I am a senior coach and contributor here, and I try really hard to make things as simple as possible for everybody. I'm never going to guarantee you that this way works the best. I'm just going to show you a way if you're struggling in getting your fundamentals right and turning the ship around to where you are a profitable player. And then from there, of course, everybody's own imaginations takes them even further. I am never going to claim that people are not better than me at this game, but I'm going to tell you I'm not a losing player, and that's just fine with me. So pile on in, like and subscribe to the video, do all that good stuff. And as a reminder for our VIPs out there that watch this video later today, 4 p.m. Eastern, we are going to go live in the private Discord channels, the VIP stuff, where I'm going to share my screen. You guys are going to direct the ship, and you're going to tell me what you want to work on, and we're going to get you right, and we're going to get you fixed, and we're going to get it straight before the MLB season goes bye-bye. Because we're down to about a month and a half. Starting late August, I kind of start, disappearing to work on football and stuff like that. And I don't like playing September baseball anyway, because with all the call-ups and all the projected lineups are bad enough sometimes with all the scratches, and the guys don't get 4 at-bats anymore. They sit, they get pulled, before they're, it's a mess. So I don't like playing the game once the rosters expand to the 40-man. Anyway, today I'm not going to go through the pattern with you in terms of the research station and the, hot pitchers, hot batters. We know how to do that. If you don't, look back through my library of videos, you'll find it and be able to just memorize that pattern super, super easy. What I'm going to do today is what somebody had kind of asked me to do, and I suspect we'll do more of this later at 4 o'clock, is use the ownership slider to show you how we build cash lineups and league lineups, single entry lineups, MME lineups, whatever it is that you want to build. Because to me, everything starts with a cash game. You have to, whether you play cash games or not, you still have to know the cash game setup, because you need to know where everybody else is likely going. That determines whether or not you want to go with them or whether you want to go against them. But if you don't know where they are, you're just playing every slate blindly. So there's definitely an advantage in being able to decipher where everybody goes. And we use a tool at the DFS Army called the chalkboard. And I'll show you that in a second, because it's very, very important today, especially. The last I checked with the projections and such, it was really obvious what's going on. So let's look at how we might set that up for a cash game first. The first thing I do is I do about 10 lineups. Not a lot. Don't need a lot. I'm going to guess at the projected ownership. This means a 0 project. If I added up players 1 through 9 in my roster and added up their ownership projections, it's going to give me a total lineup score. And if it gives me a total lineup score of 50%, then there aren't really a lot of high-owned players in that lineup. If it gives me a number like 300, there's a lot of high-owned players in that lineup for the slate. And this is how I'm going to start figuring out where people are going for cash games. And it's where I'm going to make my little nuance to get just underneath the radar and have a fighting chance at building a very, very chalky lineup, but one that still has winning chances. I do believe that if you build the chalkiest lineup out there possible, you are very hard to beat, if not impossible to beat. And I don't mean every single day. I mean over the course of a season. And you may only win at 56, 57% doing that, and other people out there may be winning at 60, 65%. When humans are making decisions against other humans, somebody's always going to have a giant edge. It's just the way that it is. But you become very, very hard to beat. You're playing all of the fundamental players, all the players the pros see, all the players everybody's talking about, all the players in obvious matchups. Therefore, you're not making mistakes. And cash games are more about defense than they are offense. They're about not making mistakes more than they are about correctly predicting the goofy guy comes out of nowhere and has 2 home runs or something like that. It's about not making mistakes. So if we're going to not make mistakes, hiding within the herd, hiding within the chalk is a very smart way to play. And it makes you very, very hard to beat on a daily basis. Now, let's figure out how to do that. I'll start with a number like 200. Minimum ownership. I don't mess with the maximum ownership. Minimum ownership. That's going to make sure every lineup that I build is over a 200% team overall ownership. I'm going to add a couple of unique players because I want the lineups to switch and swap around a little. I'm going to add a little bit of randomness because I'm going to add in that ability to switch and swap around a little bit. I'm trying to jumble up these players because the domination station is using fantasy points, more importantly, fantasy points per dollar, to determine which players go in your lineup. And it's going to continue to do that. There is no way around that with the domination station. But what I can do is I can use the projected ownership here to trick it and make the optimizer build me heavy chalk lineups. They may not be the optimal lineup, but they're going to be the heavy chalk lineups. And from there, I can form a core. I can see where most of the industry is going, and then I can make my decisions to whether or not I want to do it or I want to get away from it. So we start, and I use FanDuel just because you can use the same thing on DraftKings, and I'm looking for those 10 lineups all over 200%. If I find that, which it looks like I found it really easily here, I go up another notch, right? Like, let's go up to 220 and see if it'll build me 10 lineups there. Oh, it didn't. So my number is probably between 200 and 220, so let's do 210. And now when it says I've got a couple of lineups, only 4 teams are generated, I know those 4 teams are still over a 210, so 210 is probably my number. If 210 is about the chalkiest lineup I can build, granted, these are also GPP projected ownerships. Cash games, you may find a pitcher 75% owned. You may find a shortstop 80% owned. That's going to skew those numbers if you go double check it and say, oh man, I built for a 210 and I got a 375. These numbers are way off. Yeah, these are tournament numbers, dudes. So they will help us, but they're not perfect. They are better than any other method I know to use right now. So that's what we do. Anywho, I can shift that projected ownership now, and I can start looking. Who might be my chalk pitcher? It looks like Mike Minor, Luis Garcia, little Otani, whatever. Go through some of these other projects, and I will look at the chalkboard here in a second because it shows it in a much more clear fashion. But who are my important positions, right, for cash games? And are these guys the ones that are showing up in these lineups? Like 100% of the time out of 10 lineups, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the same guys. Mike Minor looks like my chalk pitcher, my cash game pitcher. Okay? So that's all I'm doing. Now, for me to really mix it up and find a core, and I probably should not show you this, I go to 25 lineups. I don't check and change anything else except for this number right here. I do include a third guy, third unique. I am going to come off of that number a little bit. Okay, and I am going to try to figure out where my non-negotiables are. And I'm going to come off 10%. And when I come off 10% of 21 points, or 210, it's 21 points. So I come down to about 20, round it, right? Let's play in increments of 10 because that's what the slider bar adjusts in, is increments of 10. So come down 20 points, we come down to 190. Run it again, more lineups. Why more lineups? It's forcing more and more players to mix in. So it's going to eventually show me who it absolutely cannot live without. Those guys are going to be virtually locked into every lineup, and then it's going to switch and swap all the other guys. So if I look here, 90, 90, 80, 70, 60, yeah, it tapers down in here into the 30s. These guys are not as important as these guys in the domination station's mind. So I'm looking here at Max Kepler, Josh Donaldson, Mike Minor, Jorge Polanco, 3 Minnesotas and a pitcher from Kansas City is my cash game core, sort of. Well, if you play the way I do, which is letting the machine do the heavy lifting for you, there's your core. It just doesn't have to be any harder than that, okay? So you're going to look through the lineups, and maybe you like, Donaldson, maybe you don't. Maybe you like Kepler, maybe you don't. Maybe you want, I don't want a 4th Minnesota guy very often, so this lineup I'm not going to consider. But I'm going to scroll up and down through here, and I see 3, a couple of Toronto, Simeon, Bichette, Duran, Devers, Bryce Harper, typically a pretty good cash play. Pretty solid lineup. That's all the further you need to look for baseball. Everybody overthinks it. Everybody goes crazy. And, how about Bichette? If I take Bichette out and I use, Simeon at shortstop, and say, you're okay, you might be right. But you can't prove to me over 100 slates that made much of a difference. You're overthinking it a little bit, in my opinion, and I'm very much a minimalist. I'll throw this lineup at you, and it'll be just fine. Or I'll scroll down here a little bit more, and I'll find another one. Like, I won't use 4 Minnesota Twins, even though Minnesota Twins are very important in cash games today, apparently. That's a 3x3. That's a little stacky for a cash game for me, so I'll probably let that one go by the wayside. There's 4 Twins again. Probably let that one go. 4 Twins again. Probably let that one go. Now, I wish, and we're working on it, but I wish we had a rule that allowed us to cap those teammates, cap those players. But I look here, and now I've got 2 Twins, 3 Twins, Kepler, Donaldson, Sano. Say what you want about Sano and Donaldson being cash safe, but this is what the projections are optimizing or telling us is a good way to go. Simeon as the one-off from Toronto. Couple of Houston bats. All of a sudden, Correa. Say what you want about how crappy he's been lately. Alvarez, who's heating up again, and JD Martinez and Rafael Devers. Again, this might not be a perfect cash game lineup because of Correa, because of Sano, whatever, right? But it isn't going to be bad. And over the long haul, if you just do this and pick from what the machine gives you, use a few of your own little rules, like I don't want to stack too hard, or I want to use at least 3 different teams, or whatever your deal is, figure out your pattern, enter that in your cash games, track it over time, and you're going to find out that it is going to probably do better than you were doing on your own if you're a struggling player. These are the things we teach inside DFSArmy.com. These are the things that we want you to get good at, learn how to do yourself, and then you are going to individualize your own routine after you start with a basic routine like this. You're going to individualize your own routine from there, and then you're going to come back and you're going to share with us what you learned, and we'll ask you questions and you'll ask us questions, and everybody gets better together. That's why our helmets are on leaderboards all over the place. We have been helping each other for 7 years, and we're very good at what we do. And we're not know-it-alls. Somebody comes in with some new idea, and we talk about it, and we determine, holy crap, guy might be onto something. And then we all incorporate these things, and we get better and better and better. But we are all individuals, no doubt about it. So let's say this is the lineup that I use, whatever. Now I know that Minnesota is very, very popular today, right? And so now who's the first team I'm going to probably fade in a single entry GPP? Minnesota, right? Who might I take instead? Well, Toronto, Boston, Houston, those were popping in there pretty good. I don't mind fading that chalk team and then coming in with the second, third, and fourth owned teams and use them as my single entry guys. Smart way to go. I'm still using great matchups. I'm still using projection identified positive matchups, but I'm fading the chalk. And I'm going to probably come down. Like if I'm playing a league, like a 20-man league or a 40-man pay 8 or a 100-man pay 12 or whatever the things are we talk about inside the Army, I'm going to come off this number even farther, because the bigger the contest, the harder it is, to win. The more unique, the more low-owned you need to become in order to have that shot, and you need to be a little bit more off the chalk, and then you can still incorporate very chalky pieces, but you need to be a little bit more off the chalk to have that unique flavor to your lineup. And so you can use the minimum ownership bar to do that. If I come down 20%, I come down another 20 points. And now I might say, I just want to build a 4x or a 4x3. So let's make 70% of those and 30% of those. And let's say I'm going to randomly mix these teams, and I'm going to cut in everybody but Boston, Toronto, Houston, and I only want, say, 60% of any one of those 3 teams. And now I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to say I only want 40% of these guys, and I want Boston, Toronto, Houston. Where's Houston? I probably don't want, if I want to fade Minnesota, I probably don't want any Minnesota. Let's include, I don't know, I'm randomly thinking now because I can't remember back to what the optimizer said, but let's just say I want to include 5 teams over here. These are my big stack teams I'd consider. These are my small stack teams I would consider. I'm going to make 25 more lineups. I'm going to jack the randomness all the way up. It's going to all be a minimum of 170%. And I'm going to see what this only 4 teams. Well, that's okay. If I want to lower my parameters, I can lower them a little bit. But if I get 4 teams, then I can see, well, there's still some Minnesota in there, which is really interesting. But there's Boston and Toronto, 4x3, with a Mitch Garver one-off for a little bit of chalk, and Mike Minor as my pitcher. Maybe that is my single entry lineup. It's close to the chalk. It's not on the chalk. It's not eating. And if the chalk fails and these other teams are in slightly lower owned positions, this could be the winning combination. So could Toronto. Well, there's Minnesota again. So it's really still loving Minnesota, which is weird. It would require a little bit more tweaking, and I'm running out of time on this video. But these are the things that I would do. And if I was playing in the massive multi-entry things, I'm coming down to half my number. My number was 210, so I'm going to come down to what's half of 210? 105. So 100. And then I'm going to fully stack. I might build 100 lineups, right? And I'm going to go from there. And now I've got something that's always competitive, that's always going to work out, and it's going to lead to better scores, better lineups, and more winning. Hopefully you like this. Come inside DFSArmy.com, look for me, Chapadong, and let's talk. Let's talk today. I'll see you real soon.